All right, Rabosai, good morning, or good chodesh to everyone. Let us begin. Baruch Hashem, a beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is daf Tzadik 90. We are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Peites Amud Beis 89b, and we are picking up at the Gemara. We ended off with the Mishnah yesterday. The Gemara says as follows. So Tanya, the Gemara quotes the Bracha. She'ini nanis la'aba u'la'avicha imani osa lavicha. So we have a Bracha that's a little bit of a variation on the Mishnah, and the Bracha says as follows. A woman makes a neder, I will not go ahead and give any benefit or derive any benefit from my father or from your father if I go ahead and do something for you. So what's happening over here is Rachel's making a neder, right? She's married to Ruvain, and she says to Ruvain, if I go ahead and either give benefit or derive benefit from my father or from your father, I am prohibited to go ahead and do, let me say it differently. If I do anything for you, Ruvain, my husband, I am prohibited to get any benefit from my father or from your father. So we'll say in this case over here, she's making a neder that will be triggered in the event if she does something for her husband, Ruvain. Oh, actually, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll say, so therefore we have a situation over here where halacha l'maisa, right now, nothing is being chal. Right now, nothing is occurring. Right? Nothing has happened yet. But in the event that she does something for her husband, she will trigger a neder that will prohibit her from doing anything for her father or for her father-in-law. So what's the halacha with such neder? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Nassan lo yafar. Rabbi Nassan says, husband doesn't have the ability to annul this neder. Chachamim say yafer. Ultimately, again, he has the ability to annul this neder. And I will say, what is at the root of this machlokes? So if you look at the Rush for just a moment, the Rush is in the right-hand column, and the Rush, just it's easiest, 2, 4, 6, 8, about 8 lines are from the bottom. Rabbi Nassan Omer lo yafer, Perush, lo yafer ato, the cholzman shelo asta, lefi baila, lo nesra bahana asam. The Savar Rabbi Nassan de'ino mefer ach yachal haneder. So it's actually quite interesting. Rabbi Nassan holds you can't annul a neder before it comes into effect. Right? So Rabbi Nassan says hafara, the concept that a husband has the ability to annul a neder, ultimately again is only true if the neder actually exists. So let's analyze this for just a moment. So if you look at this neder, what is she saying? Right? If I go ahead and I do something for you, my husband, right? Rachel says, if I do something for you, my husband Ruvain, then ultimately, again, I become prohibited to give any benefit to my father-in-law. Now, at the moment that she's making this neder, is the neder in effect? The answer is no. Why? Because halacha l'maisa, she hasn't done anything for her husband as of yet. So therefore, the neder is not yet in effect. Right? So therefore, again, the Gemara says as follows. So according to Rabbi Nassan says you can't annul a neder that hasn't taken effect. As opposed to the Chacham, look at the Rush. The Chacham say you can annul the neder. Why? Actually, it's the next Rush. So we'll say, so Machlokes over here, can a husband annul a neder that has not yet come into effect? So she's articulated it, but it has not yet taken effect. Rabbi Nassan says she can't annul, she cannot annul. Chacham says she can annul. Another example of this, Netula ani min haYehudim im misham shesecha. So she says, I will be removed from the Jewish people if I have relations with you. So both say, so it's the same idea. If she has relations with her husband, this will trigger a neder to go ahead and make her asura to all other Jews. So once again, nothing has happened yet. Nothing's happened yet. So the shaila is, can the husband go ahead and annul such a neder? Rabbi Nassan Omer lo yafar. Rabbi Nassan says, no, you can't annul it. The Chacham say you can annul it. So both say, fundamental machlokes, Rabbi Nassan and the Chachamim. Does a husband have the ability to annul a neder that has been articulated, but has not yet come to fruition? Rabbi Nassan says no. Chachamim say yes. Fundamental machlokes. So mostly the Gemara tells a story, very interesting story here. Hahu Gavra, the Itzar Haniyasa da Alma Alei, Inasiv Isisa kilo tanya hilchasa. Rabbi said this is absolutely an incredible story. There was a guy. This guy made a neder. What's his neder? I prohibit hana'ah from the world, right? I prohibit myself from getting any hana'ah from the world if I get married before I am proficient in halacha. So this guy, let's just kind of unwind this a little bit. This guy was nervous that if he would get married now, that what's going to happen? He's not going to learn. He's not going to learn. So he makes a neder. Essentially, if I get married before I am proficient in halacha, the hana'ah from the world should be asr upon me. Take a look at the Rash for just a moment. Rash says, Hu Gavra, 4 lines from the bottom. Hu Gavra, do Amar, Tissar hana'asa da amalai, sha'asr al atzmo hana'as habrios. Again, he was essentially asring upon himself hana'ah from any person. I will asr upon myself hana'ah from any person. In a sibna isesa kilo tanina. Rash again. Ran. Shalo shahaya rotze lilmod Torah kodem sheyisa isha. He wanted to learn Torah before he got married. Kadesh lo yispatel machmosa kidarmino barakamam de kiddushin rechayim b'tzavara va'osek b'Torah. There was a Chazal an expression about this. They say that when a person gets married, the millstone is around his neck. Meaning what? When you get married, you have to make a parnasa. So you have to make a parnasa. You don't have time, as much time as you'd like to learn. So this guy figured, let me get in the bulk of my learning before I get married. And he attached a neder to this. Fine. So this is what happened. How did this work out? So the Gemara says, Rohit begafa uvitovila v'lo imsi lemisna. So this is fascinating. Look how the Ran interprets this phrase. Roiv begafa v'tovilta b'maklo v'tarmilo. So literally again, he ran with his staff and with his cloak. And I will say, according to the according to the Ran, so ultimately again, this expression of Napa and Tovila is much more an expression. In other words, he put on his cloak, he put on his walking stick, or he took his walking stick, and what happens? That represents that he was moving about. He was trying. It's all right. He tried very hard to go ahead and learn. The Ran says, it didn't work out. In other words, he tried to go ahead and get in as much learning as he can, but for whatever the reason, it just wasn't working out the way that he had planned. So I will say, the Ran doesn't tell us why it didn't work out. The Ran just says it didn't work out. I'll point out something very interesting. If you take a look at the Rush, the Rush is on the bottom left-hand corner. Rohit begafa v'tovila, benafa v'tovila, let's say his name, kelim heim, shemachnisim behem peros. So according to the Rush, so unlike the Ran who interprets nafa or gafa and tovila as his cloak and walking stick, the Rush interprets this to refer to utensils that are used for the gathering of fruit. Shemachnisim behem peros. Vaya asik b'malachto, he was too busy working. V'lo Allah biyado l'mod, and therefore he didn't have enough time to learn. Tosas says something very similar. Tosas is actually right above the Rush. Roid begafa v'tovila, kelen shemovilim b'peros, v'lo haya yochol liga v'lilmod. Should I will say something very interesting is happening over here. According to the Rush and according to Tosas, what ended up happening was like this. This guy went ahead and made a neder. What was his neder? If I get married before becoming proficient in halacha, I hereby prohibit all hana'ah from the world or from people upon myself. So what happened? I will say, what was the problem? He started working. He spent too much time in the office. So because he spent so much time in the office, what happened? He wasn't able to learn. See what I will say? What's fascinating over here is like this. According to the Ran doesn't tell us why the guy wasn't able to become proficient in learning. The Ran just says he applied himself, but it didn't work. According to the Rush and Tosas, it didn't work. Do you know why it didn't work? He didn't prioritize it. See, in life, there are many things we have to accomplish. In life, there are many things we have to do. In order to get the necessary things done, in the appropriate time allotted for those tasks, one has to prioritize. If you don't make something a priority, what does it mean to make something a priority? Because a priority means it is important above all else. It is important. This is what has to get done above all else. If you don't make it a priority, then what ends up happening? It kind of falls into the to-do list with everything else, And in that proverbial life to-do list, most things don't really get done. So I will say it's quite fascinating. So according to the Ran, what happened over here is it just didn't work out. The Ran doesn't tell us why. The guy applied himself, and it didn't work out. So I will say, according to the Ran, what's the Musar Haskell of this story? Well, what's the lesson? The lesson is sometimes you really try, but what happens? What happens? Doesn't get done. Right? It could happen that a person could be well-intentioned. It could happen that a person could have all the right machshavas, but for some reason it just doesn't get done. According to Tosfos and the Rush, what's unfolding over here is no. You know when things don't get done? You know when things don't get done? When you don't prioritize them. When you don't make them a number one priority, that's when they don't get done. So the guy made a neder, well-intentioned neder, but what is he spending most of his time with? His gapa and tamila. Says the Rosh Hashanah, what's gapa and tamila? The utensils you use for farming, for gathering fruits. Okay, so he made his parnasa a priority, not his learning a priority, so therefore he didn't become proficient. So I will say, isn't it an incredible thing? Think about it in our own lives. In our own lives, you want to accomplish something, and it doesn't get done. I will say, if I'm honest with myself, I can make a whole bunch of excuses as to why I don't accomplish the things I set out to accomplish. But at the end of the day, the real reason it doesn't get done, the real reason, is because I didn't make it a priority. If I made it a priority, I will say, what an important lesson to learn on Rosh Chodesh. Right? Because the beauty of Rosh Chodesh, we might not be feeling the excitement of Rosh Chodesh yet at this early hour in the morning, but give it a little bit of time, a couple of more cups of coffee, right? And that excitement sets in. Because Rosh Chodesh is new beginnings. Rosh Chodesh is new opportunities. Rosh Chodeshim li'amcha nasata, tabaras, a blank slate. And it's an incredible time to reset your life priorities. What do I want to accomplish this month? What do I want to accomplish today? What do I want to accomplish this week? Set the priorities. But I will say, but more important than setting the priorities is living the priorities. You could set them. This guy set good priorities. What was his problem? What was his problem? He didn't live the correct priorities. Back to the Gemara. So what happened? So it didn't work. So I'll say, so here's the problem. Here's the problem. The guy, therefore, is not getting married. Right? He's not getting married. So what happened? This is incredible. Asra Vacha Barafuna. The Shabshay, Shavach Habahuna came along and he tricked the guy. And I will say, this is interesting. The Ran says, Shabshay, so what happened? He tricked the guy. Now, how did he trick the guy? He told the guy, don't worry about it, you can get married. You can get married. Don't worry, it's not going to trigger the neder. So what happens? The guy gets married, and I will say, what occurs? What occurs? He triggers the neder. What was the neder? What was the neder? Right? That if I get married without being proficient in halacha, I'm not permitted to get hana from anyone. So now, this guy got married, and what happens? Now he's triggered a neder. What's the neder? He's not allowed to get benefit from anyone. So I'll say, so what happened? This is incredible. Top of tzaddik. The sharkei tina. So what happens? So Rav Acha smeared the guy with some mud. Now, why did he smear him with some mud? So again, look at the Ran. Ran says, Lahar also shoot tzarech lebrios la'altor lichbos begadav. Because also by smearing him with mud, he may see, apparently, but what happened over here is like this. So now, the guy got married. Rav Acha told him, don't worry about it. Right, just get married. Guy got married. Now he's not proficient in halacha. He triggered the neder. So now, apparently, like his thought was fine. I triggered the neder. I'm not going to get benefit from anyone. I'll just avoid getting benefit from anyone. What does Rav Acha do? He smears the guy with mud. What happens when you smear someone with mud? Suddenly, what do you need of? I'll say, if you get smeared with mud, what are you in need of? A good dry cleaner. Right? So what happens now? So he smeared him with mud. So now, immediately, he needs a launderer. Right? He needs someone to launder his clothing. So what happens? So va'asir lekamid Rav Chisda. So he brought him before Rav Chisda. So Rabbi say, why do you bring him before Rav Chisda? Ultimately, Rabbi say now for hataras nedarim. Right? He brought him for hataras nedarim to be matir the neder. So Amar Rava said, Man chacham leme'avet ki hamilsa ilav Rav Acha barafuna the gavra rabahu. So Rava saw this whole thing, and he said, this Rav Acha barafuna is a smart man. He's a very smart man. Who could have orchestrated this whole thing? If not for Rav Acha barafuna. Why? The boss said, because what Rav Acha hold is very important to Kasavar. Now, boss say, I just want to point out before we get to this punchline, understand what were we talking about before? What were we talking about before? Could a husband proactively could he annul a neder that has not yet taken effect? Right? What's happened? The net in the previous case, wife made a neder. What was her neder? If I go ahead, right, Rachel's married to Reuven, so Rachel says, Reuven, if I do something for you, if I give you benefit, I'm not permitted to give any benefit to my father-in-law. So she's articulated the neder. Has the neder taken effect? Has it taken effect? No. So what do we have over there? Where the machlokes, Rabbi Nosson and the Chachamim, the Rabbanon, about can a husband annul a neder that has not yet taken effect? Okay? That was by hafara. Rabbi Nosson says no, Chachamim say yes. The Gemara then transitioned to a new case. What's this case over here? This is the guy. What did the guy do? He made a neder. If I get married before I'm proficient in halacha, I can't get benefits from anyone. What did he do? What did he do, Chavra? What did he do? Right? We'll say, so what did he do? Come on. What did he do? Right? He got married before being proficient in halacha. Right? He got married before. So what happened now? He triggered a neder. What's the neder? He can't get benefit from anyone. So what did Rav do? Shmir him with dirt. Now what does he need? He needs a launder. Okay. Now what do these cases have to do with each other? So now watch this. Rava says, who is as smart like Rav Acha bar Afuna? Tikasavar, what says in Tzadik Amadala 4 lines down, Tikasavar, Tichi Hechi, di pligi Rabban of Rabbi Nosson Bahafara, Hachanami pligi b'she'ela. Oh. We'll say, watch this. Rav Acha assumed that the same machlokes that applied ultimately by hafara, namely the machlokes Rabbi Nosson and the Chachamim, regarding can you go ahead and annul a neder that has not yet taken effect, the same machlokes that applies to hafara is the same machlokes that applies to hatara. Namely, can a chacham go ahead and revoke a neder, right? Be matir a neder that has not yet taken effect. So I'll say, so watch what happened over here. You see, the way this had to work, at least in Rav Acha's mind, is that the guy had to first actually trigger the neder in order for the chacham to be matir it, as opposed to just letting the chacham be matir it now before it was triggered, right? Because remember, let's say, what was the neder the guy made? If I go ahead and I get married before I am proficient in halacha, I'm not permitted to get benefit from anyone. So what does Rav Acha do? Rav Acha tricks the guy. How does he trick him? He tells him, don't worry about it, you can get married. He gets married, triggers the neder, now he's not allowed to get benefit from anyone. Rav Acha smears the guy with dirt. Now the truth is, the smearing with dirt is not really a necessary part of the story. The smearing with dirt just does what? Forces the guy to deal with the neder a little bit faster than perhaps he had planned to. Right? Shavach smears him with dirt. Now you need a dry cleaner. Shabbos say, here's what's interesting. So why couldn't the guy just deal with the neder before getting married? So Rav says, it must be because Rav Acha feels that the same machlokes that applies to hafara, namely, is a husband able to be matir neder that has not yet taken effect, also applies to hatara. And therefore, again, in order for the chacham to be matir the neder of this guy, right, according to everyone, the neder itself had to take effect. Incredible. Shabbos say, now listen to this. Rav Papi says no. Rav Papi disagrees, and Rav Papi says, machlokes ba'afara. The machlokes is only by afara, by a husband. Rabbi Nosson savar ein habal mefer ela im kein chal neder. Rabbi Nosson is of the opinion of say that's what? That a husband only has the ability to annul a neder if what? If it has taken effect. In other words, only if the neder. Also remember again, as we established in yesterday's daf, there's the possibility for two different stages in neder actualization. What's stage one? Good. We'll call it articulation. But as we've seen, you can articulate a neder, but the neder is not chal. The neder does not actually come to fruition until some later date. So there's articulation and there's actualization. So Rabbi says, now watch this. Rabbi Nosson is of the opinion that a husband only has the ability to annul a neder at the time of actualization. Ela im kein chal neder. Rabbi says, now what does he base this on? B'chafra halavana. Now, I just want to point out over here, the drashas that are being mentioned over here are not real drashas. They're not real drashas. They're more like asmachta drashas. So he quotes over the pasuk from Yeshayahu, the pasuk says v'chafra halevana. So we'll say, so what's the drasha? So I'll show you inside in the rush in just a moment. But the idea of v'chafra halevana is a play on words. V'chafra sounds like v'hafra. Hefer, hafara. Levana is like binyan, building. So ultimately, again, when can you be mefer the neder? At the time of the binyan, at the time that the neder is built, i.e., actualization. A neder can only be annulled or be revoked, but be annulled by the husband at the time that the neder is actualized, at the time that it comes to fruition. That's Rabbi Nassim. Rabbanan say, Bal mefer ava pi shelo chala neder. No, it's not true. A husband could annul the neder even at the time of articulation. Dechsiv mefer machshavos arumin. Quotes over here the pasuk from Eov that literally again he annuls. Rabbi say literally machshavos arumin means an unclothed or a naked thought. Rabbi say what's an unclothed thought? It's a neder. It's a neder that's been articulated, but has not yet come to fruition. Like I said, these are not the actual drashas. There's just psukim and asmachta that helps us support this idea. Shabbos say, so aval, so that's all by afara. Aval b'sheila, divrei hakol, everyone agrees, ein chacham matir klum, ela imkein chal neder. But when it comes to hataras nedarim, which is the process of revocation by a chacham only has the ability to be matir the neder if the neder has actualized. Dichsiv lo yochel divaro. Ultimately, again, his word shall not become profane. I will say, if you look at the Ran over here, so the Ran says, we'll say this is 2 lines up from before the Ran gets wide. Disiv lo yachal dvaro, lo yaakor, chalos dvaro, v'daikinon ha'achirim okrim, alma in chacham matir ela imkein chal haneder. So I will say, so ultimately, again, the way they darshan it is, lo yachal chalos dvaro. It is only once your word ultimately comes to fruition that you should not profane it. He can't profane it, but someone else could uproot it. So what we have over here is something really amazing. Let's pause here for just a moment. We have a fundamental machlokes between Rav Acha and Rav Papi. Rav Acha holds that in the same way, let's go with what everyone agrees with. What does everyone agree with? There is a machlokes by hafara. Okay, everyone agrees it's a machlokas, right? There is a machlokas by hafara. When it comes to a husband's ability to annul his wife's neder, there's a fundamental machlokas as to the mechanics of that. Namely, does a husband have the ability to annul his wife's neder at the time of articulation, or does it have to be actualization? Rabbi Nassim holds, has to be actualization, can't be articulation. Chachamim hold, no, he could even be mefer, hafara could even occur at articulation. Okay, that's hafara. What about hatara? Chacham's ability to be matir neder. So Rabbi Nassim holds, Rabbi Acha holds, the same machlokes by hafara applies by hatara. So Rabbi Nassim will say again, we can only do hataras nedarim again at the time of actualization, not articulation. Chachamim, no, could even do it at the time of articulation. I will say, why is this important? Because now this goes back to the story. What's the story? The story is the guy. And what did the guy do? The guy said, I'm not getting married until when? Until when? Until I become proficient in halacha. What happened? He did not become proficient in halacha. So what occurred? Rav Acha tricked him, got him married, smeared him with mud. Fine. Why? Because again, Rav Acha was of the opinion that a TORAH could only take place at divrei hakol if what? If neder was actualized. Fine, that's Rav Acha. Rav Papi comes along and says, no. The machlokes, Rabbi Nassim and Chachamim, is only by hafara. But by hatara, everyone agrees that a chacham could only be matir a neder when? Once the neder has been actualized. Once it has been actualized, Ava b'sheila, divrei hakol in chacham matir klum ela imkein chal neder d'chsiv lo yachal dvaro. Fine. So both say that's the fundamental machlokes. Now, by the way, major machlokes. Let's go. So let me say this. We'll say it's Minga Bryce that supports this. Let me say konam she'eni nana leploni ulumi she'eshalav. So we'll say listen to this case the Gemara brings. So we'll say, so let's say again, a person makes a neder, right? Konam, I make a neder that I will not give hana'ah to ploni. Right? I will not give hana'ah to so-and-so. And I will say, now watch this. Now the guy does an interesting thing. He built into the neder, ulumi she'eshalav. And if I try to ask someone to revoke the neder, I also can't get hana from the person I ask for revocation. So you see what he's doing? It's an interesting way to bolster your neder. Right? I'm taking a neder not to get hana from Ploni, and if I try to get out of this neder, I can't get hana from the person who I asked to release me from this neder. Interesting. So what's the halacha? So nishal ala rishon, v'achar kach nishal ala sheni. So we'll say what's the halacha? First, you have to go ahead and do she'ila. Right? So we'll say, so again, you have to go ahead and do she'ila on the first neder, and then on the second one. Now, why is that? V'i amrit nishal afapi shalochal, nev halacha l'maisa, you could do ataras nedarim even if the neder is not chal. Then the Gemara says, I boi al hay nishal baresha, I boi aham nishal baresha. So we'll say, what the Gemara is saying is like this. So watch this case. I take a neder. What's my neder? I make a neder that I'm not going to get hana from Ruvain. Okay, that's my neder. And then the follow-up neder is, and if I try to go ahead and have this neder revoked, I go to Chacham for atara, I'm not permitted to get benefit from the person from whom I ask atara. Okay, so what did the Bracha say? So the Bracha said that Allah Kalman, you should first go ahead and do she'ila on the first neder, and then on the second neder. So the Gemara says, now why is that? If in fact you would hold that halacha l'maisa, you could go ahead and have hatara even on a neder that did not take effect, then who cares what order you do the hatara on? Ibay al hayn nishabaresha, ibay al hayn nishabaresha. Then I should ultimately again be able to do hatara on whichever neder I want. In other words, the order is irrelevant since I could do hatara after the articulation phase. I don't need to wait for the actualization phase. So the Gemara says, "Ibay al hayn nishabaresha, ibay al hayn nishabaresha." So the Gemara says, one second. Umiyada, ihai kama, ihai basra. So first of all, how do you know which is neder 1 and which is neder 2? In other words, we are presupposing that neder 1 was the first one articulated, neder 2 was the second one articulated. But the truth is, you have absolutely no idea what that means in the Bracha. The Gemara goes on. So another Bracha that supports this. Konam shenin alaploni harini nazar l'chisha eshal Allah. So listen to this. I take a neder. I'm not going to get hana from Ruvain. And I will say, now watch this. And if I try to be matir that neder, I hereby become a nazir. So again, what you see what's happening over here? I'm making neder A, and then if I try to go ahead and have neder A revoked, that will trigger a neder nazirus for me. So what's the halacha? Nishal al nidro, the achrakach nishal al nizro. The halacha is, if I want to do atara, I have to first be matir the first neder, not to get benefit from Ruvain, and then afterwards I could be matir the nazirus. So the Gemara says, well, 1 second. Now understand what that means. So in this case, right? You look at these two nedarim. Let's answer for just a moment. If you look at these two nedarim, right? One of them is in effect immediately, right? Which one is in effect immediately? I will not get benefit from Ruvain. That neder is in effect now. Now, what's the second neder? And if I try to be matir neder on the neder hana from Ruvain, what happens? It triggers a neder nazirus. Fine. So what did the Bracha say? First do hatara on neder number 1, the neder about Ruvain. Now what happens when I do hatara about neder number 1? What does it do? It triggers a neder nazirus. And then do hatara on neder number 2. Now watch this, the Gemara says. This is incredible. So the Gemara says, V'i amrit nisha avabish neder. Now if you hold that you could do hatara after the articulation phase, even before the actualization phase, then what? I boy al nidro itchabaresha, I boy al nizro itchabaresha. Then the truth is, I should be able to do hataras nedarim on either of these nedarim in whatever order I want. To which the Gemara says, so this is changed in Agos V'tziyunim, Hamani, who is this? Rabbi Nassan. This reflects the view of Rabbi Nassan. Okay. So therefore the Gemara disproves it as a proof. So again, I just want to point out, just so you understand what we're doing over here. We're just trying to figure out, right, so far what it sounds like over here is that in the world of Hafaras Nedarim, which is the process, right, by which a husband or a father annuls the neder, So there's a machlokes there. Rabbi Nosson and the Rabbanon. Rabbi Nosson, you can only annul it in the actualization phase. Chacham, you can even annul it in the articulation phase. We're just trying to find out, what about Hatara? What about Hatara? Rav Acha holds, same machlokes applies by Hatara. Right? Rav Papi holds, no. By Hatara, everyone agrees that what? Hataras Nedarim could only occur when? After the actualization stage of the Neder. So we're just bringing up these particular brises to try to figure out who is correct, who's incorrect. Let's go right. Amar Ravina. So Ravina said as follows. Amar li Mereimar, hachi Amar Avucha mishvei Rav Papi. So what is this? Ravina said, Amar li Mereimar, so Mereimar said to me, this is what your father said in the name of Rav Papi. Machlokes ba'afara. The machlokes is Rabbi Nosson and the Chum is only ba'afara. Aval b'sheila divrei hakol mefer. The afapi shalochal neder. So both say it's interesting. So now they say the machlokes is only ba'afara. When it comes, or we'll say sheila, you understand, sheila is another word for atara. When it comes to sheila or ataras nedarim, everyone agrees that the chacham could be made for the neder, even though the neder did not yet take effect, i.e. in articulation phase. So we'll say, this is now another version of Rav Papi. Right? Before in Rav Papi said that halacha l'maisa, hatara could only occur when? Could only occur if halacha l'maisa, the neder was chal. In this version, Rav Papi is holding that halacha l'maisa, she'ila or hatara could occur even if the neder was not chal. D'chsev lo yochel devaro. And both say, what's his svara over here? Lo yochel devaro. As soon as there's a dibur, as soon as the neder is articulated, ultimately now the chacham has the power of hatara. L'meimra, both say amud beis. L'meimra, d'lo hava ba maisa, d'lo hava ba maisa. So are you telling me now that halacha l'maisa, the chacham could do hatara even though nothing happened? Even though there was just an articulation, but there was actually no neder made yet. There was actually no action taken on the neder. Meisvei areze kasha konam sheini nene laploni ulamisha nishal alav. So what's the now? We're recording the same question we saw before, right? Same question we saw before. So we'll say, watch this. Meisvei. Top line, second line from the top, side of the base. Konam, shini nana laploni mishanishalav. So I make an eder. I'm not going to get any benefit from Ruvain. And if I try to be released from this neder, whoever I petition for hatara, I'll also become aser nanoah to him. So what's the halacha? Nishal al rishona, the achar kach nishal al hasheni. The halacha is, I have to first do hatara on neder number 1, and then hatara neder number 2. What's the logic in that? So the Gemara says, sounds like the logic in that is because if I do hatara on neder number 1, i.e. the neder not to get benefit from Ruvain, okay, because that neder already took effect. Once I do hatara on that neder, that triggers neder number 2. Now that neder takes effect, and now I could do hatara on that. Amai. I al haim nitshal b'reisha. So I will say, but if I don't need the Nedarim to take effect in order to do hatara, then who cares what order I do the hatara in? To which the Gemara says, 1 second. First, how do you know what's neder number 1 and neder number 2? Maybe Einachinam, with the Bryce is calling neder number 1 is really the neder he articulated second, and the neder that is calling neder number 2 is the neder he articulated first. In other words, we automatically line up 1 and 2 with the order of articulation. But who says that's how the Braisa is reckoning the order? So Meisvei, I'll raise another kasha, Konam, Sheninana, Varini Nazir, Likasha Esha Alav. So what's the same case we just quoted before? Right? I make a neder not to get benefit from Ruvain, and if I try to have this neder revoked, I will become a Nazir. So what's the halacha? Nishal al nidro, the achar kach nishal al nizro. The halacha is first you have to do atara on the she'ila, and then atara on the neder nazirus, which once again seems to point in the direction that hatara could only occur when? Hatara could only occur once the neder has been actualized. V'amai, iboy al nidron nitshabaresha, v'iboy al nidron nitshabaresha. But why is that? Halacha l'maisa should be able to go ahead and, if indeed you are correct, that ultimately again hataras nedarim does not need actualization, it just needs articulation. then halacha l'maisa should be able to annul or revoke either neder, to which the Gemara says tiyufta. You are correct. This is a refutation of this position. So both sides. So now this is the end of the sugya. So what's going on over here? Excellent question, right? What is going on over here? So here's what I know. 2 buckets, right? What are my 2 buckets? The same 2 buckets in all of the Maseches Nedarim. Hafara and Hatara. So I will say, what's our machlokes? We know in the world of Hafara, when does a husband have the ability to be made for his wife's neder? 2 stages of the neder. What are the 2 stages of the neder? 2 stages? Articulation, actualization. At what stage does a husband have the power to be made for the neder? So both sides, this is a machlokes. Rabbi Nassan, actualization. Chachamim, articulation. Articulation. Right? The chiddush of articulation on both sides. Remember, at the time of articulation, what part of the neder has taken effect? What part of the neder? None. It's only been articulated. Now, we'll say, so that, and everyone agrees in that machlokes by hafara. Everyone agrees. What's the machlokes? What's the machlokes? What's the halacha b'atara? What is the halacha b'atara? So here we have a machlokes between Rav Acha and Rav Papi. Although now it turns out there are 2 versions of Rav Papi, but let's just go with the first version of Rav Papi. First version of Rav Papi is there's no machlokes b'atara. B'atara, everyone agrees the only way a chacham can be matir a neder is how? If the neder has reached the stage of actualization. Actualization. On the other hand, Rav Acha holds same machlokes that applies to Hafara also applies to Hatara. So Rabbi says, so how do we pass this? Listen to this. Share with you 2 incredible Rambams. Rabbi said, first, let's take care of Hafara. Let's take care of Hafara. At what stage does a husband have the ability to be made for his wife's neder? Is it articulation or actualization? Here it is. Hilchos Nedarim, Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Yud Beis. Yesh l'bal la'av l'hafer neder shadayin lo chalu v'lo nesru bahen. A husband and a father have the ability to annul Nedarim that have not yet taken effect. Ketzad, the Rambam says, what's the case? Kigon sha'amra hayayin asra alayim elech l'makom ploni harezem mefer afa pi shadayin lohocha v'lo nesra. So Rambam's example is a woman says, wine will become asr to me if I go to so-and-so place. So remember, at this point in time, has the neder taken effect? Has the neder taken effect? No. Why? She hasn't gone anywhere. The Rambam Paskins, a husband has the ability to be made for that neder. So both say, the Rambam Paskins, like the Chachamim, namely, when it comes to Afaras Nedarim, husband has power of annulment at time of articulation. Once the neder has been articulated, even though it has not actualized, husband has the ability to be made for the neder. What about Hatara? So we'll say the Rambam Paskins, this is actually interesting. This is in Hilchos Shavuos, Perek Vav Halacha Yudalid, Ein Matirin Neder O Shvua, Sha'adayin Lo Chalu. So it's a longer Rambam, but for time purposes, the Rambam Paskins, the Halacha L'maisa, a Chacham could only do Hataras Nedarim if what? If the neder reached the stage of articulation. You can't, actualization, thank you. Actualization. Only once the neder has been actualized does the Chacham have the power of Hatara. So therefore, I will say, it turns out another major distinction between Hafara and Hatara. Hafaras Nedarim can be done at the time of articulation. Hataras Nedarim can only be done at the time of actualization. Incredible. Let's go back to the Mishnah. But Rishon will say this is really interesting. Well, we'll at least start this today. It's okay. Tomorrow is very short. No, not so short. All right, we'll be fine. We will be fine. I will say last Mishnah in the Masechta. Mishnah. But Rishon HaYomim. So we'll say it seems like a tangent, but it's not. There's actually going to be one case of neder in here. That's why it's here. But in the beginning, we used to say, Shalosh Nashim Yosos V'not Los Ksuba. There are 3 women who could essentially force the dissolution of a marriage, but are still entitled to their ksuba. So they could force the dissolution, but they're still entitled to their ksuba. What's the case? Haomeres temani lecha. We'll say a woman who says to her husband, I am forbidden to you. Now, the Ran points out that this is a case. Actually, if you take a look at the Ran says, Mukmino b'gemara be'ishes kohen. This is talking about the wife of a kohen who says to her husband, I was violated. And I remember again, the halacha is that if a woman is violated, obviously again, the whole notion of violation is against her will, she remains permitted to her husband. The exception to this rule is a Kohen. A Kohen, chas v'shalom, if his wife is violated, she is no longer permitted to him. So in this case over here, the wife of the Kohen says to her husband, I was violated. And therefore, asur ani lecha, I am asur, atmei ani lecha, I am forbidden to you. That's case one. Case two, shamayim beini lebeinecha. Shabbos says it's an interesting case. So she says, literally again, the heavens are between me and you. So what does this mean? The heavens are between me and you. If you look at the Ran, so the Ran says, shamayim beini lebeinecha, muchach b'gemar dahadika amrlei, shin shichvas zaro yorek echetz b'shas tashmish, ve'eno roi laholit. She's claiming that essentially he's impotent. He's impotent, that his zera, his semen does not come out with force. So because it does not come out with force, therefore what? She's unable to become pregnant. So what she's claiming over here is that halacha l'maisa, she can't have children with him. The Ran points out over here, but one second, a woman is not mitzvah in period of arevia. She's not obligated in having children. He's obligated in having children. The Ran points out, again, we'll see this tomorrow, but the Ran points out that she could claim, listen, I might not have a mitzvah, but I need kids. Now, I will say, there's a very utilitarian reason for having children, besides tax deductions, right? I will say, which is that, Lamaisa, they take care of you in your old age. So she claims, I need children because who's going to care for me as I get older? So they will say that's the claim she's making over here. Now, why does she frame this as Shamayim lebeini lebenecha? The heavens are between me and you. Because we will say this is something that no one else in the world would know except the woman, her husband, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the expression over here. The heavens are between me and you. So that's the claim she's making. Next, Netula ani min haYehudim. Now I will say, if you look at the Ran over here again, 3 lines into the white lines, the Ran says, Sha'asra al-atzma hanas tashmish kala Yehudim. You know, say in this case, and this is why this Mishnah is here, she made a neder. What's her neder? I am removed from all Jews. And I will say that neder being removed from all Jews is a neder not to have relations with anyone. So essentially now she's made a neder not to have relations with any Jew, which also happens to include who? Her husband. So I will say, so in all of these cases, halacha l'maisa, these would be cases which would trigger the dissolution of the marriage, right? Because if she's been violated, she's an Eishes Kohen, she's claiming she can't have children with him, or she's made a neder that she can't have relations with him. So halacha l'maisa, these originally were 3 cases where it would trigger the dissolution of the marriage, and what? She would still be entitled to her ksuva. So we're going to stop today, something we never do. Stop mid-mishnah. We'll stop here today. We'll pick up in Meretz Hashem. This was how the halacha was originally. We'll pick up then tomorrow in Meretz Hashem with the revised version of this halacha. Both sides, shkoyach.